Hi guys, I'm Jules and you have landed on Little Bits of Chaos. If you haven't seen me before, I want to let you know that normally I am much sillier and funnier on this channel, but today I wanted to do a more serious type of video, and I have tried to film it about 5 times already and I keep getting a little mixed up. So bear with me if that happens again, because I want to try to do this with as few edits as possible to keep it true and raw and accurate. And so I want to first share why I decided to make this video. It's something I've always wanted to do, but recently my grandfather passed away, and he was a very godly Christian man who had a passion for sharing Christ with the world, and I wanted to do something to honor him. And because of that, I'm making this video today. I want to share my relationship with Jesus with you, so that if you are missing that in your life, you can reach out to me, comment down below, and I would love to talk with you about it. So anyways, I'm going to try to jump right back into this and start at the beginning again, because I keep telling it and then realizing I missed huge chunks of it, and so here we are again, take 5. So I had a pretty typical childhood in the early years. My parents were together. I had an older brother and 2 younger brothers, and we did regular family type things. We went camping, my dad worked, my mom stayed home with us, pretty typical. My parents did argue a lot, and they would split up every so often and get back together. So we moved around a lot between them splitting up and my mom taking us, or my dad taking us and living with somebody else. But besides that, it was pretty typical, and I want to share as much as I can without sharing their story instead of mine. But as I got older, my parents suffered from addiction, and so it really became a problem when I was in 6th grade, and it stopped being a safe environment. And because of that, me and my brothers were all placed into foster care. We lived with a relative for a while, and it didn't work out for me and my older brother, but my younger brothers stayed there. And my older brother, I don't really know where he went, but I was placed into a foster home. And so I was alone, and it was very scary and lonely. Being 11 years old and living with people that you have never met before, who don't particularly seem to like you, was very hard. But there was something good that happened while I was there. I was put into respite care, which is basically when your foster parents take a vacation from you and you go and stay with a different foster family for a short period of time. So I went into respite care with another family, and they were amazing, and they will be back in the story. But while I stayed with them, I was able to go to Vacation Bible School, which was held at their church. And while I was there and getting registered, my cousin walked into the building, who I hadn't seen for probably a year. And this doesn't seem very relevant, but it is. So my cousin walks in, and we get very excited. We get to spend this whole week together playing and enjoying all of our crafts and our time spent at Vacation Bible School. Well, after this week was over, I went back to my regular scheduled foster home, and I wasn't there for much longer after that. My parents got custody of us again, and I moved back home. And once I had moved back home, I was actually able to continue going to church there because my cousins had already been going. The church at the time had a bus ministry that would go out and pick people up that wanted to come to church, bring them to church, and then bring them back home afterwards. And so because of that, I actually went to that church for probably about 3 more years. And because I went for 7th and 8th grade and a little bit of 9th grade, so about 2 more years while I lived with my parents. And so the bus would come and get me and my cousins, and we would go to church. And then as I got a little older and a little more teenagery, I stopped going. Not for any particular reason. I just was a teenager and decided I would rather be hanging out with my friends than going to church. So I stopped going, but I had still had those couple of years where I got to know Jesus and the people that went to church there. And so during that time, my parents started using again, and our home became again an unsafe environment. And so I went and lived with a family member again, and right before I turned 16, so I was still 15, when I was 15, my biological dad passed away from an overdose. So my dad passed away from an overdose, and at the time I had started drinking and smoking weed, and I just wasn't doing good. I wasn't doing good at all, and I was probably too much to handle at the time. Not that I was, I don't know, particularly bad or rebellious. I wasn't doing good. And so one day I called my social worker and I said, I need somewhere else to live. This isn't going to work out. Find me somewhere else. And so she did. And she told me where I would be going to stay, and I said, that's great because I already know them and I like them. So we had court a couple days later, and I was placed into permanent foster care. And that's not very typical. That's not a usual thing to be placed into permanent foster care, into the foster home that you will be staying at until you age out. That's not something that happens very often, I don't think. And so, but that day I was placed into permanent foster care at the foster home that I was going to. And it was a wonderful thing. And I do not consider them foster family, in case any of them see this, because I do talk about this very regularly, how much I don't consider them foster family. They are my family, extended and otherwise. All of them are my family, and I am so grateful to have all of them in my life. The grandfather that passed away recently actually technically was my foster grandfather, but I don't like to call him that because he didn't call me that. Anyways, so I moved in with them, and I finally had some stability in my life. And because they are a Christian home, I was regularly going to church, and I decided then that I wanted Jesus in my life, so I asked him into my heart, and I have been a Christian ever since. So that happened when I was 16. I am 29 years old now, so I've got a few years under my belt, but not that many, only a few. So while I was there, I was incredibly blessed. They put me through a private school, which I probably would not have graduated high school had I not gone to that school, because I had failed basically 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And I think that was just due to my home situation and not really being taught the value of school, and it was never really a priority in our home. And so I went to the private school, and while I lived with them, I met my now husband, and we have 3 beautiful children together. My dad walked me down the aisle, and yeah, it was just such a night and day difference. The time that I spent in my life without having Jesus. Sorry about that, my battery died. We have one in. It's not fully charged, so I'm gonna have to wrap this up pretty quickly, I guess, but you're probably sick of hearing me talk by now. So anyways, it was a night and day difference between when I didn't have Christ in my life and when I did. My pre-salvation, I lived in a very dysfunctional and bad life. I, as an early teen, was drinking and smoking and doing things that I shouldn't be doing. And then when I got saved, I started to, clean up my act. I wasn't drinking or smoking anymore. I was doing amazing in school. I graduated valedictorian. I mean, granted, there were only 3 of us, but I still graduated valedictorian. I got married and I had 3 kids, and I have 3 kids, I should say. And my life is filled with joy and peace, and that's not to say that I don't have bad days, because I do. Everybody does. But now I have hope, and I get through it. And yeah, so I guess I don't really know where to go from there, but to encourage you that as hard as life can be at times, and as hard as it seems in this moment, if you don't know Christ and you want to, please comment below. I would love to talk to you and chat with you and help you out with that. And I want you to have hope, because I want to share with you my favorite verse. So my favorite verse in the Bible is Jeremiah 29:11, and it is, "For I have a plan for you. It is a plan for good and not for evil." And I know that to be true. God has a plan for us. It's a plan for good and not for evil. And I came out of that, and I came into the good that God has planned for me, and I know He has so much more planned for me, and I know that He has so much planned for you. He has a purpose for you, and you matter. You are important to Him, and you are loved by Him. And that's where I'm going to end this video. I think that is what today's video was about. I shared what I went through and my time of realizing that I was loved by him, and I want you to know that you're loved by him too, and he has a plan for you, and it is planned for good and not for evil. Alright, bye guys.